And hello, everyone. Welcome to Dragon Heads Episode 1. This is the official pilot episode. I'm your co-host, Thorn. With me, my gracious host, the Master of Ceremonies for this evening, Mr. Joe. How are you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing well.
Fantastic. This being the pilot episode, we're going to start things off a little different than what we'll be doing in future episodes. We're going to give kind of just background and introductions to kind of what we have done and know. And I will let Joe kick us off here. So, where do you come from in the D&D history? Like, what is your background here, Joe?
Well, I want to say that I have first kind of forte into that area was Magic the Gathering. I started playing Magic the Gathering back in high school. You're talking 2001, uh, all the way back when Onslaught Block came out. For those that know what the hell I'm talking about, and played for several years, played competitively to the point where I placed in a couple tournaments for the amateur tournaments. I placed fourth in one of those. Um, I I got into it and eventually got out of it because I had other obligations. I had jobs. I had life. And then the thing that I think it really drew me into D&D was Critical Role. Um,
Okay.
they it was I was looking for something to listen to in a job where you could listen to something all day, and that filled that void. And in that process, it led me to an Adventures League, and Adventures League became, next thing I know, I've been playing with everybody in that Adventures League for 5 years. So that was with me being a player, me being a DM, and kind of just figuring it out and doing everything as we kind of go along. In terms of D&D, I've only played fifth edition, but I'm aware of the other editions. I've looked into like Call of Cthulhu. I haven't really gotten to a campaign or anything for it, but I've played like a one shot. Um, and I've heard stories and from everyone else, especially the older people, the of 3.5 of second ed of all the other iterations of D&D and the pros and cons of them. And from what I've seen, 5e is the most streamlined. It's the best all around thing that can incorporate whatever you want into it.
Mm.
And that's kind of where I've been at, and I've been DMing and playing off and on for the last 5 years. And now, what about you, Brock or Thord?
I I was old school for a very short amount of time, about 8 months right out of high school. And we're talking, I graduated 2001, so this is a long time ago. I believe it was third edition. I started playing with a bunch of my buddies in my apartment, sitting around drinking beers and making the most ridiculous games that we could come up with. Um, After that, I had a son and was not able to play as much, so I stopped playing. And once my kids got older, they wanted to dabble, so I got back into it just recently. Played a little bit of fifth edition with them. Uh, Played fifth edition with my co-host from my previous show, um, and then was just searching for groups. And if I'm not mistaken, it's your wife that introduced me to you and the group that I currently play with. If I'm not mistaken.
Er- Eric's wife.
Eric's wife. It was Eric's wife. That is right.
Yeah.
Um, by random chance, sitting at a bar at Applebee's talking to my wife about wanting to find an online group, and the bartender says, "Hey, my husband plays, and he plays on Discord. Here's his name." So by just the most random of occurrences, I found a group to play with locally here in Ohio, and got to talking with you about starting a show and kind of kicking around ideas. And here we are tonight with our inaugural episode. Really looking forward to it. You know, kind of been sneaking in a little bit of stuff with the rest of the group about possibly streaming some gameplay and putting out our sessions on Twitch also. Kind of getting some good reviews on
Well,
that.
I think the thing for me personally, with just recording a section, it's less of I don't personally think that our game is going to be very entertaining to the general public, at least not the way that like Critical Role is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it gives people the idea of what a real game of D&D is when you're not a bunch of voice actors
Yeah.
or a bunch of people that that are super great at playing the game. It's like, yeah, we're screwing around, we're making dumb jokes, we're doing all kinds of things that you just do as friends, hanging out, playing a game. And the beauty of it is that we try to do it and try to do it. And the other thing I personally like about it is if I missed last week, for instance, and you guys recorded it, I still need to listen to it, but it's there for me to listen to and go back and reference if like, oh, hey, did I leave this? Did I get this item? Did we forget about this item? Did we talk to this NPC? What was that NPC's name?
Yep.
I can go back and reference that.
That
That's the beauty of recording it.
having that record for reference is super nice. Um, and it seems like everybody in the group is kind of receptive to it, so we'll definitely have to, continue to check that out. But we got a couple bits of news here that we're going to talk about. This being the first one, we're still kind of feeling out where we're going to source our news from and everything. But Joe, you've got one here about Wizards of the Coast. You want to take this one real quick?
Um, yeah, it was from Nerd Immersion. Ted from Nerd Immersion had done this deep dive into a survey that Wizards of the Coast was doing, and the whole thing that the survey was is that some people were getting these questions, and I don't remember all the details off the top of my head, but basically it was asking them, well, how much do you spend on miniatures and D&D books and yada yada yada. And one of the things that really came up was they asked about, um, would you be interested in doing a tabletop, on a virtual tabletop. And the best thing that I have that I can explain in comparison to it is, the comparison I've heard thrown around the internet is Tailspire. And what Tailspire is currently is a it looks like the 3D terrain with custom miniatures on on your computer. That's the best way I have to describe it.
Okay.
And what they were describing with this virtual tabletop that Wizards is trying to develop, I guess you would have an app on your phone, and would be able to connect to like smart TVs, and you would able to have like your character sheet, everyone's individual character sheet on your phone, and be able to make rolls off of your phone onto the smart TV. And when I heard about this, I just was blown away because there's so many possibilities that could be done with this, not only for just Dungeons and Dragons, but like you could make completely new games and completely new ways of playing. Of, hey, this is your new party game. You know, it's an app on your phone that everyone downloads this app real quick, and then next thing you know, you're playing on your TV, and everyone's doing their like whatever the game is. And I just found that whole idea that that's what they're developing very interesting. Um, the only problem is with the virtual tabletop. I feel like Wizards kind of got a little bit of a late jump on it, especially after everything that's happened in the last year. It it seems like, why didn't they try to rush this out a year ago, instead of, oh, we were going through all this testing, all this development, and now we're releasing it once everything's starting to go back to normal.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think they might have another ulterior motive, or do you think they want to make sure that it was perfected and done right.
It almost sounds like it because you've got Roll20, you've got Foundry, you've got I think there's one just straight called Virtual Tabletop. I think there's a couple other ones that are out there that all use source books through their respective websites, and I think Wizard just finally came to the point where they're like, we want to do one ourselves. With like, it's for our game. We want to kind of say this is the way that it should be. And
We need to just get into that space.
yeah, we need to be there. Like everybody else is using our content inside of their ecosystems. Why not have our own ecosystem? Because I'm not gonna lie, being somewhat newer to fifth edition stuff, I thought D&D Beyond was actually Wizards of the Coast, like actual thing. And through this article, I found out that no, that's not the case. So I was actually really shocked to hear that they're just now doing the development for it. Because I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like if you're gonna be like letting other people use your content in these ecosystems, why not have one of your own? So I mean, they're stepping to it a
You're
little
absolutely
late,
right.
but I think that
Yeah, you're
if
absolutely right.
if they do it, I think it'll probably be one of the better ones. I would hope.
My big thing is that if they have if they're able to come out and present something that is not only better than everything else, but it goes above and beyond, that'll be a huge splash. But until we actually see something in like a beta test or something at a convention where they put it out there and they're like, yeah, this is what we've got, we're gonna be waiting. You know
Yep.
what I mean? It's gonna be a waiting game. So what's next on the news?
Warchief Gaming. This is one I'm really excited about because I played World of Warcraft for a very long time. Chris Metzen left Blizzard Entertainment, kind of retired for a while, and then announced that he was starting Warchief Gaming. It was like supposed to be just a tabletop gaming group out in California, and then COVID hit and kind of screwed that up a little bit, and they started making their own content, and they're coming out with their first 5th edition rulebook. Auroboros. The Kickstarter ended. They hit like all of their stretch goals. They had to add extra stretch goals. I wasn't able to get in, so this news actually made me really happy. They're doing an extended Kickstarter. They're adding on time after the fact, so you can get a kind of a late Kickstarter backing. So if you just go to Warchief Gaming on Twitter, their website, it'll kick you right over to the Kickstarter, and you can jump in on this. And it's set in the 5th edition, but this is, according to Chris Metzen, listen to an interview with him. This is the campaign setting that him and his buddies from high school wrote and created and played in high school. And they all got together. Like, he called up old high school buddies and was like, hey, do you remember what we did here? I want to put it in this rule set. So this is literally Chris's high school game that people around the world are going to be able to play. And this is the mastermind that gave us Thrall and some of the best characters in World of Warcraft. He is great at creating worlds and characters, and I couldn't be more excited about being able to attempt to play this game in his world. So definitely, if you're interested in something within 5th edition, but not within the actual storyline of Dungeons and Dragons, definitely check out Warchief Gaming and take a look at Ouroboros.
Can I ask you a couple questions about them then?
Yes.
All right. So what is the like theme? Is this like one of those dark campaign settings? Is it kind of an open world campaign setting? What's the kind of theme for this campaign setting?
From what I remember from the the interview, it's many years, like thousands of years after basically an apocalypse like wiped out the world, and things are starting to get back, and the magics of the world aren't your typical magics. Like, the way that it was explained in the interview was a lot of your AC and your powers are going to come from tattoos instead of weapons and armor. So you get these Ouroboros tattoos, and the concept is it's eating itself. You can use these like super, like, just jacked up powers that you get from the Ouroboros tattoo, but it comes at a cost. You start to go insane, or it starts to wither you, like, depending on what it is. But you get immense power, but at the cost of potentially wasting away yourself. So it's a give and take balance that you need to play with in order to maintain your character. And then he didn't go a whole lot into the story in the interview that I listened to. Just that their first campaign ended with like their group destroying the world. And then the second campaign was like years after, and that's kind of where they're starting us off at, is in this new age of the world kind of coming back together. It I have all faith in world development and character development when it comes to Chris Metzen. So however it plays out, I have a feeling that every character, every city, every continent that we come across in this book is going to be fleshed out to the point where when you read it, you will be able to picture it in perfect detail in your head the way that Chris Metzen pictures it in his own head, because he's just that good of a storyteller.
And that detailed and detail oriented.
Yep, definitely.
Cool.
Um,
That sounds awesome.
Sorry about the late transitions. We're new at the transition switches. Got the Ouroboros cover up right now for everybody. But we've got one last little bit of news, and this is more on the video gaming side. D&D Dark Alliance. Have you played it yet?
I have not.
All right. So my son got me the pre-order for Father's Day, and I was kind of excited. But then I started to hear reviews from beta testers, and then while I was at work, the day that it released, I heard the reviews, and it wasn't that great. A lot of bugs, super buggy, everybody was saying, kind of flat gameplay. I came home, I gave it a try. I really enjoy it. Like, I'm having fun with it. It's just a chill, kick back, slap goblins around is where I'm at right now. My biggest gripe with it is crossplay doesn't fully work right now. Like, I can't play with my buddies on Xbox or Windows 10. I can only play with people on Steam. But they're working on that. And then the user interface is god awful. Like, it's terrible. I hate to say it, but like, those are my two big gripes. I don't play with in-game music on any game. I want to hear where shots are coming from, where monster noises are coming from. How has it always been?
You want the ambient noise.
I want the ambient noise. I had to click minus 100 times to mute the music. There's no slider, there's no mute button, there's nothing. It was terrible. But other than that, like, the only bug I've experienced is when you hit a mob, they go flying. But I think it's great because I'm playing I believe his name's Wolfgar, giant hammer. When I swing the hammer and I get the final hit, they just fly off the map. It's hilarious. It's great. It works. But other than that, like, the game's fun. And they've already kind of given us a little bit of a tease as to what's coming in the next year. So we're getting 2 free DLCs, one in summer, one in fall, and then late fall of 2021 we'll get the first expansion. They've already given us a name, Echoes of the Blood War. So they've got a lot of content scheduled to come out, free and paid. And with the Echoes of the Blood War, you're going to get a new playable character. They're saying that it's kind of a spell-based character. Because right now there's really not a spell-based character in the game. You have a fighter, a barbarian, a ranger, and I believe a rogue is what they're officially labeled as. Um, so it'll be interesting to see a magic user in the game, but I'm having fun with it. Might be worth checking out in a couple months once they get all of the other issues fleshed out. We'll have to wait and see, but until then, I'm going to continue grinding it out. It's just a loot grind, man, and I love me some Diablo. Let me get in there and just beat stuff up until it drops me some loot. I'll play it for hours. But
I mean, Diablo, World of Warcraft, all those games were just, I need to go in here and find this piece of item so that I can get stronger.
yep, yep. I love the loot grinds, man. It's so much fun. But that's all we've got for the news.
Thorn, I don't mean to. Did you have the Exandria Unlimited thing up during the whole Dark Alliances thing?
Yes, I did. That's those scenes. That's those scene switches.
That's fine.
I did forget we were going to talk about Alexandria.
I'll put a plug in for Exandria Unlimited. Well, I'll put a plug in real quick for Exandria Unlimited. That is the new 8-episode thing from Critical Role. It's Isaiah. I can never say her name right. Isaiah Isengard. It has a. It's one of those names you look at, like it's the name where the teacher says, and the student just goes, yeah, here, because they know that the teacher's never going to say their name right. But she is quality DM. I watched the first episode. The second episode is actually premiering probably right about now, because they premiere at 7 p.m. Pacific, which is 10 p.m. Eastern, which is right now. But they have done a great job with the cast. Matt Mercer, Ashley Johnson, Liam O'Brien, Robbie. I don't remember Robbie. It's Robbie and Amy are the two other new cast members that I don't remember their last names off the top of my head. But the whole group of them they're funny, they're memorable, their characters are hilarious. But I'll put that plug in there. It's great, and I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to seeing more episodes of it.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I think that takes us to our top 5 list.
Yes, sir.
Week. And I made up this list, so I guess I'll roll. Did you have a slide for the items, or do you want me to just go with whatever?
I've got it going off of the exact order that's up here. So
Okay.
if we want to start off, we can start off with, I believe it is the winged boots.
Well, these are the top 5 magic items DMs avoid giving their players. And first and foremost is the winged boots. And by no means is this magic item broken, but it's that magic item that you give it to a lower level party, and it's like all of a sudden that chasm they have to get across, or that mountain they have to climb, or that tower they have to climb, suddenly someone's just flying up there, tying a rope off, and having everybody climb up or everybody get across. And it's a minor inconvenience as compared to it was supposed to be a challenge to do it. And it's really one of those things that it doesn't use up any resources. It's it's not like it's a wizard casting a fly spell or a um an Azamar using their wings so that they're able to do it, but they only can do it for a minute. There's enough flight speed that it's like, oh, you have 2 hours of flying speed every 12 hours, and or you have, uh, I have to read it now, 4 hours, and you can use it all at once or in short flight duration. So for the most part, people just use them in that short duration, and it's like, oh, I flew across here for 2 minutes. It's like they never use that full 4 hours unless they're in a full out chase in the sky, which at that point you're probably epic level campaign and it doesn't really matter. So it's one of those weird things that, like, the main reason you give this to your players is at the point where everyone else is already able to fly, or they're already able to do something to the effect that this is just for, oh, hey, the barbarian needs to get up near the flying dragon. You know, it's one of those things that you delay giving this item out because you don't want every challenge to be too easy, and then you finally give it out and it's like, it's just so that this one guy can get up there and get in the face of whatever big bad thing that they're fighting is flying. And it's one of those ones that I like it, but it's tricky whenever you have to give it out, and it's like, I hate giving it out. What are your thoughts on this?
Uh, in the campaign that we're currently playing in, we had a spell cast on us that essentially gave us all the ability of winged boots for like 4 days. And I found that during that time, everywhere we went became super easy because it's like, all right, well, we were at the bottom of a pit and we needed to get to the top, and we knew that there was a zombie horde coming down. So what did we do? We just flew up to the top. Like it, I could see where these boots turn what could be epic encounters into just, hey, I'm going to skip this whole thing that the DM wanted us to do and just kind of fly by it, because we kind of did that at points.
It makes those things trivial.
Yep. And it it kind of saps a little bit of the fun out of the game. I mean, there was times where it was like, hey, I'm going to use it to get up over this wall, when I probably should have went through the front door and initiated the fight there instead of, bypassing a couple low-level guards. But me personally, I'll use it if I got it, but it's more fun to actually take on the challenges and not fly over them. It's like flying in World of Warcraft. It makes the game easier, and that's not always for the better.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why DMs avoid giving these items out,
Mm-hmm.
especially to early levels. Um, Second on the list is the always dreaded deck of many things. And I'll ask this: I know that you have limited exposure to different parts of the game, but have you heard any stories from the deck of many things? Let me just ask that.
I'm not 100% sure. I don't think so, unless this is the deck that is currently being used in our campaign. I think it might be a different deck.
It is not the deck. That is a different deck. Yes,
Okay. Then
but
I don't know too much about the deck of many things here.
well, uh, one of the things that is with, even if you're a DM and you try to prepare the deck so that it isn't a complete full deck of 22 cards and it looks like there's some cards that have already been drawn. There are cards that wreck campaigns, that will sidetrack campaigns, will um, give people fortune, take away people's fortunes. it can do it has the power to grant wishes, which the wishes are their own box of worms, Pandora's box, whatever you want to call it. And it is one of those things that I've lost count of how many times there's been somebody's told something about, man, I have this story about this time somebody drew a card from the deck of many things, and it tracks all the way back to the beginning of D&D itself. And I I don't know how else to explain it other than the fact that I would say that it is so much to manage from a DM standpoint. It can be fun, but it's so much to manage of having to figure out on the fly, figure out, oh, this guy drew the void card. What random place in the outer planes am I sending him to? What you know what monster is going to be guarding them in the outer planes of the void that they're trapped in? And it's just one of those things that they can't just it stuff making that stuff up on the fly is a hard thing to do, or even be like, oh, that's going to end our session, and then you're scrambling the next week figuring out everything that you have to do for that new adventure that they're suddenly thrust into. And I enjoy the deck of many things. It is a fun item for a high level campaign, but if you gave this to even a level 10 party, it could completely wreck the party. It could completely sidetrack the party, or it could give them all their riches and wildest dreams. And basically, going back to the winged boots argument, it either wrecks the campaign or it makes the campaign on easy mode. Whichever way, it makes it hard from the DM standpoint. So they try to avoid giving it out, but ultimately people have that temptation of, oh, I want to draw a card from the deck of many things. I know you haven't watched all of Critical Role, but in the first campaign they find the deck, and there's some great um encounters and adventures of Grog, especially drawing from the deck of many things. Everyone else is terrified of it, but Grog is like the big dumb barbarian, so he's like, "Oh, I'll draw from the deck and see what happens," and it's epic every time it happens. Epic every time it happened,
Yeah,
and everyone was on the edge of their seat the whole time. So,
just scrolling through here and looking at this, like, Skull, like, you literally could potentially delete a character out of the campaign by accidentally pulling the skull. Or hey, here's the Jester, 10,000 XP, just off the rip. Or you could, there's one on here I saw that you lose 10,000 XP that bottoms you out at a level. I couldn't imagine. I know my luck with the dice. I would pull some of the most wretched cards that you could pull and just ruin my experience. There's no way I would want to come across one of these, because one, I would be too intrigued to not draw cards, and two, I would pull the worst cards every time and then hate myself for pulling them. This just seems like a bad idea all around, but a fun bad idea. Definitely.
and that's exactly it. That is exactly it. It is a fun bad idea, and because of that in itself, it's, oh, hey, this fun bad idea, people enjoy it just because it's a fun
Yep.
bad idea. But the problem with that is from a DM standpoint, is people work hard on their characters, and people work hard to get quests done, get gold, get magic items, and next thing you know, it's like, oh, hey, the one I remember is that a friend of mine pulled from the deck and had a secret enemy, um, and it turned out that enemy was the Water Baron of Yartar, and whenever we went back to Yartar, suddenly he had wanted posters all over the place because of this card he drew, and he suddenly had, like, it was suddenly a big thing where we had to disguise him. We had to, and it was a huge problem that we ran into. It was luckily reasonably easily avoided, but we had to deal with that for the rest of the campaign. And we went through Yartar, I want to say 2 or 3 more times, because we just had to go there for different things in the campaign. But like I said, it's one of those things that it is complicated. It is a fun bad idea, but it's a lot of work from the DM perspective, and that's why DMs don't give it out a lot.
Oh, I can see it.
Number 3 on this list is less of a bad idea, and it's more of, when will you have the time? And it's the Manual of Golems. And again, it's not that this is not a bad magic item. All of these are not a bad magic item. But the problem is that A, they're expensive, and B, they take a lot of time. And it's like, when you have a good campaign going, you don't have 90 days. You don't have 30 days.
Yep.
You don't have 120 days to sit and do nothing and pay, build a golem, plus the 100,000 gold it costs to make them, 60,000 gold it costs to make them. And it's one of those things, like, giving this to a player, it feels almost like it's worthless to them. It's a magic item, it's very rare, but it's worthless to them, except for them to sell off. And if they sell it off, it's like, okay, well, then what's the difference of giving him this or giving him a bunch of gold?
Yeah.
And it's to that one player that's like, well, I'm going to make a golem. I got to make a golem no matter what. It's unless you do like a time skip where they just don't, they've slain a dragon, they've made a bunch of gold, and one of the players does nothing but, I'm going to spend all my gold and all my time to build a golem. It's one of those things that you have to commit so much time and resources to this that I don't want to say it's not worth it, but it's one of those things that you don't get as much out of it as you put into it. You know what I mean? And unless you do some wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff where they're able to do 120 days in a week or something, it's not going to help you out. It's just frustrating. It feels like you have this thing that's really rare and is worth a lot of money, but at the same time, if you want to actually use it for what it does, you're going, I don't know what to do. And that's why when you have that, well, half a dozen one way, 6 the other, you're basically going, I am not helping the players a whole lot, other than it's like, oh, I'm giving them gold anyway. Why not just give them the gold?
Yeah, just give them the gold.
So that's why I personally avoid giving out. Yeah, I personally avoid giving out manuals of Golem, because you never get to use it. And if you have an item that you never get to use, it sucks. Now, the next item on our list is the exact opposite of that. It's, if you use it, you're going to get screwed. And that's the demon armor. And the catch with the demon armor is a fairly simple one. It is a cursed item. And it simply says, once you don this armor, you can't take it off unless you get a remove curse or something similar. And it's like, while you're wearing the armor, you have disadvantage against demons. And if you're in a demon campaign, okay, that's terrible. But for the most part, that's not the big problem. The problem is you can't take it off. Now, depending on how strict your DM is, for the most part, if you take a rest, you are it's understood. It's common understanding that you take your armor off so that you can sleep comfortably and get a long rest and not suffer levels of exhaustion. With this armor, you can't do that. So you're constantly having to put strain on the party. You're constantly always going to be exhausted. So everything you're going to do is going to be at disadvantage. And if you get multiple levels of exhaustion, you're going to be at the point where you're going, well, I can't. I make saving throws at a disadvantage. I'm making attack rolls at disadvantage. My speeds have, and I mean, if it got bad enough that you weren't able to do anything about it, you could ultimately die from exhaustion,
I was gonna say you can die
and
from exhaustion,
the
right?
demon armor could technically kill you. Right, but because it's understood that you always take your armor off to sleep, being in armor you can't take off, it puts you in that sticky situation. As a DM, are you going to rule it as, well, yeah, you can still sleep in your armor, but it you're going to get exhaustion, and it's like it feels really shitty to do that to a player, even if it's like a cursed item that they want to get rid of right away, because then you're either getting rid of a cursed item right away, or you're in a position where you're screwing over the party and the players really hard. And either way, it's not fun.
So,
And that's why I avoid giving it to my players.
and just reading over this, being not fully familiar with the way some of the stuff plays, I know a lot of stuff is kind of up to DM discretion. But so in order to take the armor off, you have to remove the curse. But isn't
Yeah.
would removing the curse then negate all of the benefits that you get from the armor because the curse is what is giving you the benefits? Or would you still get the +1 to bonus AC and the +1 to bonus attack with the 1d8 clause? Does that all remain? Because you could, in theory, get the armor and then remove the curse, but then it would just be regular
Well,
armor, right?
yeah. And here's what I would say is, if I were DMing this, and if my players were careful and they either identified the armor themselves or got the armor identified, and they found, oh, hey, there's this curse with it, and one of the players says, man, I could really use that though, and they go through some sort of process to purify it, I would keep it as a +1 armor. But the thing that makes it, and the thing that I would do, because it is that, um it is demon armor. Because of that, it makes it like, I would get rid of the bonus, a +1 to attack and the D1 clause, because you're getting rid of the demon aspect of it. I feel
Yep.
that's part of the curse and part of what makes it what it is. I would still leave it magical, but I wouldn't give it the other stuff that it gets with it. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
If they're going about the route of purifying it. But
You purify it and it
that's
would
what I
just
feel
become like a
is right
+1
for the
armor.
flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But if you're trying to get all the benefits and none of the detriments, it's hard to say that it would work like that. And me, as in my mind as a DM, it doesn't work like that. So it is what it is. But like I said, I just try to don't bother with it altogether. It's another one that I just try to avoid. And then last but not least, we have the Luck Blade.
This seems
And
absolutely
this is the
ridiculous.
one. Well, this is the one that I try not to give my players, because I'm okay if you have just like a singular use of luck, okay? But this has a single use of luck. It has a single use of wish, or it has like multiple uses of wish if you roll well on it. And it's like, this is again going back to the, look at all the freaking headache. And for the most part, like if you have an ability or a character or skill that tries to fudge the dice or alter what the dice is going to roll or gives you an extra chance, I understand that. It's part of the game. But there's always that one person that wants to take this to the extreme and they make a halfling divination wizard with the lucky feat, and I want to strangle them. Because when they roll a dice and then they're like, "Well, I'm gonna use my luck point on that. Oh, that wasn't good enough. Well, I'm gonna use my potent die," and they're basic. It feels like they for one attack or one attack roll or one saving throw, they're trying to figure out if they want to use three different abilities they have, and it's like, dude, just make a roll and go with it. I get if it gets advantage. I get if okay, you have one time of way to re-roll it, but it's like they have to decide on every single roll, and it drives me absolutely insane. And if you give out a luck blade, it's just adding insult to injury. And then on top of that, you have the whole problem with Wish, because as much as I love that spell and think it is extremely, uh, cornerstone of D&D, it is always that complicated thing that you have to try to walk a fine line between the player and DM of what are they wishing for? Is this too much? Are they trying to get too much out of the spell? And there's also several other factors that come along with Wish, um, where you can copy a spell like Simulacrum, or copy a spell like Meteor Swarm or Gate or something like that that can be really interesting, but at the same time is really um, like it's really restrictive because they're trying to look at other spells to basically cast this with to have other spells that they don't normally have access to.
Mm-hmm.
But it, it's it, ultimately it is one of those things that I like it, but I just try to avoid giving it to players.
Yeah, it just
So
seems like it opens up way too much.
yeah, it's too much. It's too much, and it slows down your gameplay. It slows down your combat, and that's one of the reasons why 5th edition has been so successful is because it streamlined and made that all faster. But so the next thing that we've been working on is we're talking about a couple two different things. One is that we called it a backstory, and I just want like legitimately I had this idea and I threw it at you and said, what if we just make up a backstory of a random thing? And I tried to think of something common that doesn't fall into like that stereotypical thing, you know. And in this case, I picked I just picked a halfling rogue, and so many times people with rogues they're like, we want to make these edgy rogues that are brooding in the corner and they're loners and all this, and I'm like, but you don't have to. So one of the things that I came up with is, and this is a little spiel of what he is, and I'll give you the spiel and see what you think about it.
Sounds good.
I named this guy Howard Took. He's a thief rogue, um, and he comes from a large family that runs a bakery. From a young age, he learned how to steal rolls, pastries, food, and all that stuff. He learned how to lie to get himself out of trouble, and is one of those common faces that he gets mistaken for his brothers, his uncles, cousins, and all that sort of things because he's from this huge family. So he has that um, John Smith or the average Joe sort of idea or look about him, and that actually makes him a better thief because try describing the average Joe halfling to the town guard because he just took your gold pouch or something.
Yep.
And the other thing that I put with him is it would be funny because I would make it wherever he goes, he's running into a family member somewhere. And there was a point where I started working on a D100 table for him, where it was like, he has an Uncle Sam who's a soldier for the army. He has a Aunt Sally who's a flower peddler in this city, and it's that hey, roll on this table and that's who's in the next city. And it was going to be a whole joke that everywhere you go you always find a took. And I pulled that name from The Hobbit. It's one of the names from the Shire. They Old Man Took was able to ride a full-fledged pony, I think is what they said, or something like that. And it was one of those things I loved the idea for it. Um, what do you think? What do you think about it, and what do you think I could do to make it better or more unique?
See, I like the idea where it's not your typical um it's gang member or like working with a criminal syndicate. Like, this is just a kid that grew up just 5 figure discounting at the local shops because why not? Like, it's every time I create a character, I find myself falling into the same type of like tropes, and I've been trying to break out of them. Like, I think next week I'll be writing up a backstory for a dragonkin because I have a backstory, and I think it works, and it's not your typical like uh sad story where family was wiped out. I played in a game with my kids and my former co-host and his wife, and quite literally all of us had almost the exact same backstory because they were all tragic. We lost our families in war. Like, this is a story, like this is a backstory that doesn't fit into one of those typical backstories. So I kind of dig that. It reminds me of, oh, I can't think of the movie. There was a movie where there was a kid who he was the child of a baker, and there was like a homeless girl, and he would steal bread to give to the homeless girl so she could eat.
Hunger Games?
Yes, holy crap, it was the Hunger Games. Like, and like this, I was thinking of that exact scene like when you're reading this, and I'm
Yeah,
like, this makes sense, and it's not your typical, oh, I'm gonna just walk up and stab somebody with a poison blade and steal their gold. Like, no, I'm just gonna walk around and I'm gonna steal stuff simply because I can. No, I like it. I like the way that it works. You could have a lot of fun with the family member in every city because sometimes you're not cool with certain family members. So you could be walking down the street and you roll that drunk uncle who likes to start fights at the family reunion, and he walks up and he slaps you for no reason. Like, the family in every city would be such a cool storyline, um that would add so much flavor and keep it
that's the thing is I think it would not only add flavor to the character, it would add flavor to the
to the group.
world.
Yeah.
And yeah, because even in the next campaign, if you have that next campaign in the next world, you're gonna run into a took everywhere,
Yep.
and the DM will have a field day with it. And I love the idea of when a player comes up with a concept like that to say, hey, you're gonna run into these guys everywhere, and the DM's gonna be like, well, I've got a list of everybody and their brother, and I'm writing down where they are, and you're going to run into them somewhere along the line in this campaign or maybe in the next campaign.
Yep. I like it. Like that would be such a cool thing to watch play out over the course of a campaign, meeting the family members, and watching this thief not be that like bad guy criminal, but just be your everyday run of the mill like I steal to survive type of person. I dig the backstory. I like it, sir.
All right. Well, next on our list, we have what we're calling our rules corner. Now, this is one of those weird things that I talk to you about a rule, and I try to pick a very simple rule that is easy to understand but hard to explain.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to talk about this week is surprise,
Okay.
and it is quite literally, the more I read into this, it it, it seems very simple. Okay, you have a gelatinous cube sneak up on people that are worried about what's ahead of them, not what's behind them. A group of goblins jumps out and attacks your caravan of guards, or the players lie in wait and pop out and kill a bunch of goblins or kill a bunch of kobolds, whatever the case may be. And the the rule reads rather simple. The DM determines who might be surprised, and if either side tries to be selfie, it's a mute point. But if the DM compares a stealth check compared to a perception check, or in a lot of cases, it may not even be a perception check, it may just be the passive perception. And it's one of those things that any character or monster that doesn't make that hit that threshold, they're surprised. And in functionality of it, it's hard to it gets real sketchy whenever you have that one person that makes the check and that one person that can't. And I think the one thing that really gets me is it says if you're surprised, you can't move, you can't take an action, uh, and that for your first turn in combat, and you can't take a reaction until that turn ends. So it's one of those things that suddenly all the things that you normally do in combat are void. Like, and the one thing that actually caught me off guard when I was rereading this is you can't take a reaction. So your rogue's uncanny dodge, nope, they can't do it unless
Yeah.
they hit that passive perception. They uh, absorb elements, hellish rebuke, all the things that cost a reaction to use. You can't use them if you're surprised, and it's one of those weird little things that there are a few things in the game that allow you to not be surprised or limit your surprise, and you can use surprise to your advantage on. But the first one obviously is the alert feat, and it's the alert feat is very underrated, and the reason it's underrated is because it's simple. And whenever you look at the wording of the alert feat, it literally just says you can't be surprised. You know,
Yeah.
as long as you're conscious, you can't be surprised. And in addition to not being surprised, anything else that would have you advantage on you, they just don't have advantage on you, and you get +5 to initiative. But it's like it seems like such a simple feat, and then when you pair it with a surprise attack like that, all of a sudden you're always going to be, well, all of a sudden, instead of the DM going, well, I'll just have them make an attack real quick and then we'll roll initiative, all of a sudden you have to roll initiative because they're able to potentially make an attack on something that's trying to surprise them before they get the surprise attack, and it gets messy. And that's one of those things that with the +5 to your initiative, you're going to be ahead of most things, especially if you're any sort of dex-based character like a rogue or a ranger or a monk. And those sort of things are able to jump up and have a big initiative bonus now. They can't be surprised, so they may be attacking the people that are surprising them, and it gets real fishy real fast. So it's one of those things that understanding that is hard, because when you just want to be the DM and be like, well, I want to surprise them with a surprise attack. Well, if someone can't be surprised, how do you do that? And it's like, oh, well, we have to roll initiative and then see who got the initiative order and who gets the jump on who. And then it doesn't feel as much of a surprise. But so I think a lot of DMs kind of just hand wave with the surprise. But on the same note, it's the reason they do that is because a lot of people don't take the seat because they underrate it. And I remember I was on a Critical Role forum, and jokingly around, people were saying, I said, Liam will take a feat that annoys Matt. And someone's like, well, what feat's he going to take this time? And I'm like, the alert feat. They'll never see it coming. He'll always see it coming, or something like that. And he just, and I got a lot of replies about it, because they're like, oh man, that would be perfect for it, because he's the master of trying to have somebody come out of nowhere and sneak attack the players. And all of a sudden it's going to throw a monkey wrench into that. Now, on the opposite end of that, the other thing that always gets thrown in is with the assassin rogue, who it has a couple abilities. I believe it's assassination and deadly strike. I'm terrible with the ability names, especially the high ones that you only get to use like
Death
2 or 3
Strike?
times before the end of the campaign.
Yeah.
Death Strike, that's it. And those two both work off of surprise. So if you're able to surprise an enemy, you get critical damage, you get all these extra benefits to it, which are great. But the kind of catch-22 is you have to surprise them. And this goes back to, well, what if you're an assassin rogue and you're trying to surprise somebody with the alert feat? Well, you can't, so you can't get those added benefits. And this goes back to the good old, anything you can do as a player, the DM can do as to the NPCs or the bad guys.
Yep.
So it's one of those fun things of you trying to figure out how to best use that, and how you're getting your stealth score above something like Ancient Red Dragon's passive wisdom. So it's, again, one of those weird give and takes. But ultimately, it's one of those things that I think I explained it well here. And is there any questions you have for me about surprise?
I mean, for the most part, surprise seems pretty straightforward. Alert seems pretty straightforward. I'm not gonna lie. I'm playing a Damphir fighter dual classed into a barbarian. I'm basically a tank. I intercept. I protect. I like the +5 to the initiative because I tend to not go first in the turn order because I have terrible rolls. But that +5 for me would be phenomenal to potentially make it to where I'm going earlier. I don't know if the other things other than the not allowing creatures to gain advantage on attack rolls against you as a result of being unseen by you, that might be also beneficial. But both of those are pretty straightforward. My only question is reading through the assassin class, why would anybody play that? You have like basically one chance at most of those abilities that I saw, and then they're useless, it seems like. I don't get the assassin. I don't understand it.
I want to say for the assassin, it depends a lot with what sort of the group is, because if you make a very stealthy based group, and I've seen a couple different uh, group compositions where it's like there's a barbarian, a rogue, a monk, and um, a sorcerer or something that has a decent dex, and they're able to find ways to push, out to the point where they're finding a way where the whole group stealths in, or maybe a ranger or druid has passed without a trace,
Mm,
and the group itself is able to stealth in really high. All of a sudden, that assassin, they're able to punch really really hard, or maybe they're going into a social encounter and the rogue is off on his own, hiding in the rafters, looking for that moment to shoot whoever their bad guy is. Um, that could be really powerful. But the problem is that, like you said, it's an all or nothing sort of feat where you either go all in for this is the best way that you're going to get to kill them, or you're rolling the dice on some, you're rolling the dice that one chance is you're going to get first, and you're going to be the one to get surprise on the enemy in order to get that huge amount of crit damage.
mm-hmm.
Now, granted, the idea behind that is you're basically trying to kill them with one shot. Whether that happens or not, it's up to the dice.
Yep. So I believe that's going to
But
take us into our encounters. And we have
yep.
2 encounters. We kind of set up some parameters. Uh, we wanted waves of enemies, plant based. I think those were really the 2 big parameters that we were looking for. And we got 2 very different encounters here. Uh, one that is a very professional, like you would see an actual encounter, and then one that is like I hit the pro I hit the requirements, but it's not that great. And we'll let the listeners
Well,
guess whose is who.
I'm fine with letting them know whose is whose, but I want you to run through your encounter first,
Okay. Um,
because I think you running through, and go ahead and run me through what was going through your head when you were making this encounter. I know we said it was meant for a 5-person level 5 party,
yep.
and it was it was fairly simple in terms of, yeah, this is what we're doing, this is the thing that we're attacking, we're going for. um but what was your thought process when you went through these creatures?
So kind of when I was thinking of the encounter, my idea as I was thinking as I was the DM, this would be an off the beaten path encounter. This is not a encounter that is scheduled in the game. This is the party is going from point A to point B, and if it takes them 2 hours of travel time, I would roll a d20 for every hour, and if it hits a 15 or higher, they would get this random encounter, and it would be in the middle of the path. It would be an oasis. There would be a tree surrounded by bushes with slight movement. They could either choose to go around it or attempt to go through it. Going through it would then trigger the encounter, getting them 10 awakened shrubs. as they fought through the awakened shrubs, once they got down to a certain amount, the bridesmaids of Zugtami would then initiate into the fight. As they killed the bridesmaids down to 2 of those, that would then trigger the 2 thorn slingers. And then once one of the thorn slingers was dead, the tree in the center of the oasis would come alive and join the fray. So it was a wave of progressively different monsters going through the encounter until they got to the final piece, which was the tree. And then just a small roadblock, something to add to the travel time. It could be something that may pop up while the party is taking a short rest, a long rest. They wake up in the morning and suddenly there's this oasis sitting next to their camp that wasn't there the night before. That was kind of my thought process. And then I like the idea of a large amount of small creatures leading into a slightly smaller amount of more difficult creatures, increasing the difficulty in the creature as it goes up with less of them coming. It's just that old school like wave battle from like World of Warcraft or, you know, something along those lines was kind of my thought process here.
Well, and I'm gonna be a little critical here, but
No, go
a
for it.
couple of the things that I saw with these monsters, um, a lot of their to hit is really low.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the shrubs are +1 to attack. The it has to keep loading. The bridesmaids of Zigamori, they don't have an attack. Legitimately, they have 2 basically things that they have the hallucination spores, which it's a DC 10 Constitution saving throw, and it can incapacitate somebody. And there's the infestation spores, which they can do once a day, that can be really bad if they fail another, again, DC 10 Constitution saving throw, which I feel like most characters are going to make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw. But on the off chance that it doesn't, that could create some interesting things happening. Because it says on a failed save, the creature is infected with a disease called the spores of the Zigamori, and also gains a random form of indefinite madness. And it gives you a link to the table.
Mm.
And that lasts until the creature is cured of the disease or dies. While infected this week, it can't be reinfected. The ending of and it must repeat the saving throw every 24 hours. So it's one of those things that this can basically, if they die from it or die while they have this infection, they become a type of mitocron, which that's cool. That's that whole idea of, okay, you're a weird plant monster now. That's kind of crazy. But again, the same thing with the awakened shrub. The awakened shrub has an armor class of 9 and 10 hit points. At level 5, you have all your melee classes have 2 attacks. Your casters have all their cantrips get bumped up at level 5, and then to boot, you have things like Hunger of Hadar, Fireball,
Yep.
those big spells, which if any of these things happen to be hit by Fireball, I think the Thorn Slinger isn't weak to fire, but the other ones are. The other 3 that you picked are. And it's one of those things that there's nothing here that, from a player perspective, scares me. Like there's even the awakened tree only has +3 to attack. And I'm sitting there looking at it, okay, it's a +3 to attack and it's 2d6 +1 bludgeoning damage. I'm like, I feel as a level 5 character, I'm not terrified of that.
Yep.
It's one of those things that I'm looking at and I'm going, there's a lot of them, but I feel like every turn you're gonna have 4 or 5 of whatever it is go down. And it's like if one person doesn't get that knockout, it's probably like the cleric or the bard or something who's a support role.
Mhm.
And they're probably looking at it as, oh well, I'll make sure everybody's healed up or has blessed or whatever else they need to make sure that they make their saves. They don't get sucked into the rest of this encounter. And I see this as it's going to be a lot of things trying to hit the players and failing epically, because I feel unless you're a wizard or a sorcerer, um, most of the players are going to have 15, 16 plus AC, and it's with a +3 to hit, you're not going to see. You're looking at over a half failure rate. I mean, if you have players that are all like 18 AC or more, you're only going to be able to hit 20% or 25% of the time,
Yep.
and it's one of those things that you're just going to be sitting there rolling, constantly missing, and going, well, he swings and misses you, and they come up and stab it, slash it, punch it, for a bunch of damage, and then they're like, oh, well, that we killed that pretty quick. Anything worth looting in here? Oh, it's just a bunch of trees. Okay, and then they move along. And I mean, if you have a wizard in the party or a sorcerer that knows fireball, I could see this whole encounter just being pretty much over before it starts,
Yeah.
because they cast fireball or Hunger of Hadar, and nothing in this encounter has more than 20 feet of movement. So that halved, and they're gonna be dead before the encounter even gets going. So it's not that I'm saying it's a bad encounter. I'm saying that depending on what your party is, I could see this being really. I could see it be one of those encounters that is almost trivial,
Yep. More of
and
an
it's more
annoyance
of
than
a
anything.
player beatdown. Yeah, it's more of a player beatdown than it is a challenging encounter.
Yep.
Well, that being said, let's flip over to my encounter, and I went with a completely different idea in mind. I went I went with waves, but my waves were very I liked the idea of something calling to them and uh bringing in other things. The first one on my list is the Shrieker, and quite literally, it's not like it doesn't do anything. Like it doesn't have an attack. It doesn't have a um. It doesn't have any sort of um. It doesn't have anything that it does, and all it does is as soon as you get within 30 feet of it, it just goes. It screams, and I'm like, what better way to get the attention of other um plant monsters in the area by this shrieker just screaming at the top of its lungs. So my idea, and one of the things I love to do, is put an encounter out there to just see, hey, there's this thing you noticed, and just let the players sort of poke the bear, for lack of a better word. So my idea for this encounter would be they set up camp, they set up a watch, okay? And have whoever's on watch roll a perception check. Well, they roll a perception check and say it's a 15. Okay. and I say, everything seems pretty quiet, but you notice a large patch of giant mushrooms, about 5 feet tall, about 60, 70 feet away from the camp, and there seems to be a few little clusters of them over in that area. And they seem kind of big for, just average fungus. And I would just wait for the player to go, I wonder what's over there, because the DM described it a little too well. So they go over, and as soon as they walk up close to it, next thing you know, it screams, it wakes up the party, and they're all scrambling, going, whoa, what's going on? And next thing you know, they've got the Thornies, which they're not overly powerful. They're not crazy. They don't have a crazy ability for attack, but they have two other things that really make them tough. Is one, their thorny body. So anybody that tries to grab it or get up close to it and do that, it has that thorny body. And number two, it has regeneration, and it's one of those things that I love creatures that have regeneration that are at a low CR. And this one, it doesn't get a lot. It's one of those things that I enjoy having those creatures because they stick around longer for you. And these are, from my opinion, they're going to be the distraction. They come in, they harass the players right away, and you have shrieking, the shrieking things in the bathroom. So they're in the back of the encounter. So they're trying to hack these shriekers so they don't pull more things. It's that whole idea of you're in a dungeon and you make too much noise and suddenly half the dungeon's coming for you. And then the kicker, I love putting overly powerful monsters against my players, because one, I'm okay with them running from a fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm okay with them realizing that it may not be a good idea to, okay, we took care of these shriekers, we took care of this Thorny, but this big giant corpse flower that has a whole bunch of dead bodies in it, we may not want to hang around for that one. We might want to run. And on that same note, is if they do stick it out and do fight this thing that is really powerful against them, because it has the stench of death, which can do that. It can digest the corpses to regain health. It can make zombies that can help attack it. It gets multi attack with 3 of its tentacles, which are +5 to hit, and you have to make a Constitution saving throw on whether you get poisoned or not. I mean, for a level 5 party, that could kill somebody. And if they go through it and are able, maybe they take it in range and kind of kite it around, or do something clever that you don't even think of as a DM, but they find a way to kill this thing. The other thing that I like when they do something, when I put something that is clearly overpowered and my players defeat it, I love rewarding them. I love doing that. And the best thing about this is there's dead bodies in there. One of those dead bodies has a magic item, I guarantee it. Because I'm going to make sure every time my players at level 5 defeat a corpse flower, that out plops a guy with a necklace, and it's an amulet of health. Or out plops a guy with this weird looking belt on it. It's a belt of dwarven kind, or a belt of strength, or whatever it is that I see my players kind of eyeing as a magic item. It's a great thing to drop this in and have it be a way to say you can either run from this thing or you can fight for this thing. But if you fight it and kill it, it's going to be a huge boon to you, because it's looking like, oh, hey, You guys fought something way more powerful than your level implies, and because of it, you get rewarded for it. And I think that's the way that it's best to approach um, all those sort of things, because that way you're able to reward players for stepping up and taking on a challenge.
Oh yeah,
So, what are
definitely.
your thoughts on my encounter?
Um, Definitely a little more intense than mine. Uh, I like the idea of your first wave isn't necessarily a wave of monsters. It's a trap trigger. As soon as your players notice the mushrooms and the DM points out the mushrooms in a way that draws their attention, you're gonna get them to walk over there. And as soon as they step into it, they've already initiated the Thornies coming in. Um, the Thornies, this encounter thing keeps messing up on me. Keep reloading.
It's doing the
Um,
same thing for me.
the Thornies with the, like you said, the regeneration. A group not knowing that they have a very specific thing that they have to do to take these out. Your 5 Thornies could turn into being way more difficult than would be expected, because sometimes groups don't focus targets down. So you have 5 people attacking 4 or 5 different targets, thinking that they're going to be able to just, instantly kill him in 2 rounds. Well, in those 2 rounds where you've done maybe 20-25 damage, because you're solo attacking, they've gained back half of that in their regeneration, just prolonging that section of the fight, then making the corpse flower that much more difficult because you've used so many resources potentially on the thorny, and then the corpse flower being a corpse flower. Um, the thing is absolutely terrifying when you look at it, and all of the different things that it's capable of doing, consuming corpses to regen health, summoning zombies. If there happens to be other dead bodies on the ground, it can just suck those up. Also, it doesn't even have to be the bodies that are inside of it. Um, all in all,
It can be a player.
yeah, it could be a player. Um, Now, like, I guess that would be one of the questions that I would also ask. Where is that at? Corpse flower grabs 1 unsecured dead humanoid. So it wouldn't be able to kind of eat the thornies. It would have to be a humanoid. So I guess that's one of the good things. None of these monsters being humanoid, it couldn't just recycle its dead friends. But um I like the idea of fight or flight. If you fight and you win, you get rewarded. If you run, it's not a big deal. You did what you needed to do, you survived. But that's almost 5,000 experience for your encounter, with the potential of magic items coming off of corpses on the inside. It would be a very tempting fight for most groups looking at the corpse flower. Me personally, at level 5, I'd probably bounce. just just looking at this, I don't know if I would want to go up against this particular encounter at level 5.
Here's the other thing. I don't know if it would be. It might come down to party composition. If
Mm-hmm.
you have a ranger and a sorcerer or wizard where they have enough ranged attacks, and that they can uh, take care of the thornies without too much of a problem, because if you are shooting firebolts at the thornies every turn, the regeneration doesn't work. If you shoot cold at the thornies, the regeneration doesn't work.
Yep.
And it's one of those things that certain casters, that especially like if you have a storm sorcerer or maybe a wildfire druid, something like that, that their specialty just happens to be one of the things that the Thornies are weak against, it could drastically change how hard this encounter is. And with the corpse flower, it can't move a lot. That's the big problem with it. But man, get in there and kick, you know, kick butt if it gets close enough. And maybe it might be one of those things that you keep running away far enough back that you're 60 feet away from it. It creeps another 20 feet. You back up another 30 feet.
Yep.
Every time. I mean, there's ways around it. It's just you have to just use your abilities and think outside the box to do it.
Yep. Yeah, because you get in that 10-foot range and allow the multi-attack. That multi-attack, man, that could do a ton of damage really quick to... I mean, like I said, I play a very upfront and personal fighter barbarian. Like, I would be in this thing's face and I would just be getting absolutely punished. But yeah, like the composition, being able to kite it, take it from range, I think that would be the best case scenario for this type of encounter here.
Well, and the other thing I was going to say is if you're up close and personal with it, you have to make that saving throw of the stench of death, which is within 10 feet. You have to make a 14 DC Constitution saving throw, unless you're a construct or undead, and on a failed save, you become incapacitated for the end of the turn. So all of a sudden, all those 3 tentacle attacks are at advantage, and you're going, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. So
Yeah, see, me
what?
personally, playing a Damphir, I'm classified as undead anyway, so I I wouldn't worry about the stench of death, but most parties probably have like a dwarf fighter or a human variant barbarian, something along those lines. I didn't even like really look into stench of death because of that. But yeah, like you're basically just allowing yourself to get absolutely decimated if you get in close and you fail that DC savings throw. But
Yep, absolutely.
definitely a much more constructed. I'll look a little more into my, because I wasn't even looking into the plus hits or plus to hits. So for next week's encounters challenge, I will definitely be taking a look at that, and we'll see what we can come up with for next week.
Yep, sounds like fun.
But that's
Anything else before we go?
I think that's everything for this pilot episode. Kind of seeing where we stand, playing around with the scene switches, and I think that's everything. You got anything, Joe?
Hey, have fun. Keep playing D&D.
Sounds good. That's gonna wrap the show. We do the show live on Twitch. If you're here watching us, thank you so much. You can hit that follow button. We really do appreciate it. We'll give you a shout out on the show. Getting ready to set up the iTunes and all of the audio feeds. Those will be coming later this week. You can find the show over on Twitter at DragonHeads2. You can email the show, dragonheads216@gmail.com. Any questions, comments, concerns. We'd love to hear anybody's feedback that has checked in on the pilot episode and wants to maybe give us a suggestion for what they would like to see for an encounter, maybe a sort of a bio. Any listener feedback is greatly appreciated. Follow the show right here on Twitch if you're an audio listener coming up here soon. Twitch.tv/DragonHeadsPod. We record Thursday nights, 9 p.m. ish. It's gonna depend here for a little while. We'll get the time locked down though. Our intro music, A Self-Induced Psychosis by my buddy and former co-host Kyle Wynn. Check him out. I will throw up a link for his Bandcamp. Great guy, video game developer, musician, all around great person for letting us use his music for our intro. Really do appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight with us. We do really appreciate it. Have a great evening.
Peace out.